Just like Karen and Charlie Knox, Heath's parents, Barbara and Joe, were also worried about their son.
Joe and Barbara were absolutely beside themselves. They couldn't control him anymore. They didn't understand what was making him tick. They did not understand the anger.
At Henderson University, Heath was flunking out, drinking, and getting into trouble.
I mean, he lived my life for me. That's what it was. And I think in my mind it was a question of whether I could live without him. What would I do? I'd have to make my own decisions.
10 days before the terrible murders, Stocks broke his silence and revealed his shameful secret.
I talked to my mother and my sister about him. I found out later that apparently, see, I didn't know anything about this. My mother had apparently said that she had saw Jack and I in bed together at our house.
Heath was so brainwashed by Walls that he felt guilt-ridden for telling his family about the sexual abuse. So, like a child admitting he did something terrible, he went back and told Walls that the secret was out.
I betrayed him. I was supposed to protect him. Then I wanted him to take him away from me. The one sentence that is stuck in my mind is all in those kids' minds and was always told to us: if you have a problem, kill it. I had created a problem. He told me to solve that problem.
9 days later, Stocks murdered his family. That was his true test of loyalty to Jack Walls. After years of being told by Walls that his family didn't care about him and that only he did, Heath Stocks took matters into his own hands.
Next thing I know, they're all dead. They're all laying there. Just seeing him. The years of the fighting, the Jack saying how much my dad hated me. He didn't love me. It was, I know that he had told me to kill the problem. But in that moment, it was, I wasn't driving them. I wasn't driving the car. I was in charge when it wrecked.
When we come back, Jack Walls' world finally collapses when one courageous scout risks everything and goes public.
He destroyed everything that we ever taught those children.
I can't blame Jack for me pulling the trigger. I can say that he was the cause of my mindset when it happened.
With Heath behind bars, it appeared that Jack Walls' shameful secret was safe. But it would not be for long. In July 1997, 7 months after the murders, it all came crashing down on Walls. That's when Karen and Charlie Knox were told that a neighbor's son had been molested by Jack Walls.
We went and got Wade, and Charlie took Wade into his bedroom and sat him down on the bed and said, "Son," he said, "has Jack been molesting you?" And he said, "Yes." So we immediately got on the phone, called Jonesboro, to where my oldest son was, and said, "Brooke, this is what has happened. This is what we've learned. Is this true?" And he said, "Daddy, you believe every word those boys tell you." So we knew then that Brooke had been molested too.
That night, the Knoxes went to visit the neighbors to discuss what to do about Jack Walls.
And the doorbell rang. And Wade had got in the gun cabinet and got out a gun, put it to Jack's head, and brought him over and rang the front door. And he said, "You go in there and you tell my mama and my daddy, what you've been doing to me all these years. And Jack looked at Wade like he was going to kill him. I mean, this anger, this hate came out of his eyes. I've never seen a human look like that before in my life. And then all of a sudden, his whole body just dropped. And he said, "It's true. It's all true." I knew right then. And I told him, I said, "You're the reason my boys are like they are." I said, "You sucked the life out of them, Jack. You deliberately, cold-heartedly connived it. You sucked their life out of them." That man, I learned later, had sneaked into my child's bedroom at night when Jack would get off work and raped him in his own bedroom. And we were getting up the next morning and punishing Wade for the screen because the screen was tore off the window.
Incredibly, and perhaps to protect their son's privacy, the family said they would not prosecute if Walls agreed to intense psychological counseling. When he refused, they filed charges.
Point blank, I said, "Why did you rape my boys? Why mine, Jack?" He looked at me so cold, so arrogantly, and said, "I like the outdoorsy kind."
Walls admitted to the 2 rapes, but this time, unlike the Hogan case, there was a complete investigation led by Lone Oaks Police Chief and the Arkansas State Police. And that's when more victims came forward.
It wasn't opening a file so much as opening a book.
Betty Dickey was the special prosecutor.
We were looking at 50 to 100 young boys over a period of maybe 20 to 30 years that he'd molested.
In order to convict Jack Walls, the victims had to testify in court. But because of the statute of limitations for certain victims, only 6 boys were eligible to testify. Joy Cook was the victim coordinator.
Oh, we just talked and talked and talked and talked. We talked about what was important to be said. They poured their hearts out. They got used to going over all of this horrible stuff.
When they're on the stand telling those stories and then they break down and start crying, there wasn't a dry eye in that courtroom, and I was one of them. I've never gotten personally involved in a story until at that time.
Heath Stocks was brought from prison to testify.
None of us can actually tell you what he's actually done to us inside our minds, the way we think, the way we feel in love. Nobody can tell you.
I think Heath had a troubled relationship with his father at times, and I don't think it possibly might not have been as bad as Jack made Heath feel that it was.
And for the first time, Stocks also told the court that Walls ordered him to kill his family.
We have every indication that he not only told him to do it, but he was there to see that it was done, if not participate in it.
Was anybody else in that house with you that night?
Not that I can remember.
Jack was the one everybody turned to secure the scene after the murder. And Jack was the one who kept going around asking the other people involved, did Heath say anything else? Did he say anything else? Because Jack was obviously concerned about how much Heath had told him.
During this entire time, no one from the Walls family came to court in support of Jack. We asked his father, Judge Walls, for a comment.
We don't think in the same manner. I'm not set up. I want no publicity. And I just want to be left alone.
In January 1998, Jack Walls was sentenced to 4 life sentences and 2 40-year sentences.
You think you could really be cured?
The state of Arkansas has a real good program.
Without the victims getting up there and pouring their hearts out and telling their stories, I don't believe we would have ever gotten the sentence that we got.
But that sentence didn't last long. Wall's attorneys appealed because of the Stocks' testimony regarding the murders.
He was not on trial for the murder of Heath Stocks' parents and sister. So we consider that was irrelevant evidence to consider in this sentencing purpose.
Wall's sentence was reduced to 3 life sentences plus 3 40-year terms, all served concurrently.
In legal terms, he got 1 life plus 40.
And there are still more appeals filed on Wall's behalf.
My fear would be if he got out, would be that he hurt more kids.
Jack will still never get out, and should never. If we could have asked for the death penalty for Jack Walls, we would have. That was not an option.
Next, a town copes and tries picking up the pieces.
The devastation that he has wreaked on so many families is just incredible. He has forever changed these people's lives, forever changed them.
From the outside, things look calm in Lone Oak. Kids still belong to the Boy Scouts, and now with Jack Walls behind bars, parents can breathe a sigh of relief. But in reality, there are few happy endings to this story. Even though Doug Hogan was the first to blow the whistle on Walls, feelings about him are mixed.
Some see me as the guy who come forward first and told the truth from the beginning. Some see me as the guy that wouldn't keep his mouth shut and just let it go.
In contrast, most people, however, consider Wade Knox a hero for forcing Walls to confess. But Wade has suffered from severe psychiatric problems and has been hospitalized.
I have found him in our shop in the fetal position, telling me he didn't want to live. So we had to deal with that. He's been in the hospital 2 or 3 times. He's had extensive psychiatric care.
And he's also been in trouble with the law. All of these problems have left his parents feeling helpless.
I'm going to wrap that child up in a blanket and give him to God, because we've done everything we know to do. And we'll support him, and we'll help him, and we'll be there, and we'll love him. But now he's got to make himself alive.
As for Heath, his grandmother and attorneys are trying to get his sentence reduced.
A case could very easily be made that he was not in his right mind. He was under persuasion by someone else.
And since prosecuting the Walls case, Betty Dickey has written the governor of Arkansas a letter requesting him to review the Stocks case.
I have just said that some things were uncovered in our investigation of the rape cases that led us to believe that Heath Stocks was not adequately represented.
But Dorothy Stocks still has hope, and every Wednesday she drives to the prison to visit Heath, the last link to her family.
I've got sense enough to know that Heath has to pay for what he did. But I would like to see the sentence lowered to where someday Heath could get out. He needs help, and he's not going to get it where he is.
Jack Walls affected a lot of kids here, but yet the fact remains that none of these kids killed their family. Heath Stocks is the only one that killed his family. Jack Walls, I think, is right where he needs to be. Heath Stocks is right where he needs to be. Basically, I hope that, that neither one of them sees the light of day again.
Now, almost 2 years after this ordeal, the emotional scars still evoke tears, anger, and frustration. Thinking back, if people had just believed Doug Hogan in 1992, so many boys could have been spared from Jack Walls' abuse, and 3 people might still be alive this very day.
What's going to happen to our society if we keep on allowing this and keeping this behind closed doors, and small town people keep it in the town, and people with power and money can control on who finds out and who doesn't?